Welcome back, and today we are doing 7th grade math, chapter 4, lesson 7. We are talking about converting between systems. Now, converting between systems is the same thing as saying changing our measurements to other measurements. So, for example, instead of saying how tall you are in feet, we would convert feet to inches. If we're traveling at a certain amount of feet, we may turn them into yards or miles, depending on how long we're traveling. So let's look at our notes. Converting between systems of units. Wavy bacon, approximate or about. So anytime you see those two little waves, it says this is about that. It's an approximation of what the value is. Cut out and glue top of page 320 from math book first. So if we go back to our textbook here, page 320 would be here, and here is a list of conversions that you're going to want to have. This, again, you can cut it out of your textbook, paste it into your notes, you can copy it down, make it different colors, it's up to you, but this should be in your notes. 1 inch equals 2.57 centimeters. 1 foot is about 0.30 meters. 1 yard is 0.19 meter. A mile is 1.61 kilometers. And so on. This should be in your notes. So, continuing. Type of measurement. A larger measurement is U.S. customary versus a smaller measurement is metric. When converting from U.S. to metric, it's going from a larger to a smaller unit. You will have a fraction. So in case you know, U.S. measurement would be over 1, metric over U.S. Basically a whole number over a 1. Example 2.54 over 1. This is referring to, we go back here, the 1 inch equaling 2.54 centimeters. This is the U.S. customary versus a metric system. An inch is a bigger measurement. Even though 1 inch equals 2.54 of something, an inch is a larger measurement than centimeters. So when we're converting from our U.S. customary to a metric system, the metric is going to be a smaller unit, but could also be a larger number. Going back to our notes. To solve, cross-cancel the inches diagonally. So what we're saying here is we're trying to figure out how many inches is 17.22 inches. Sorry, we're trying to figure out how many centimeters is 17.22 inches. So remember, 1 inch is approximately 2.54 centimeters. And this is why we wrote it like this. And this is called a ratio. 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. Now we have 17.22 inches. We want to find out how many centimeters that is. So we put it as a ratio. And I know this is a bit confusing, but this is what it actually turns into. So again, 1 inch in the metric system becomes 2.54 centimeters. Now, what we want to do is we want to find out how much 17.22 inches. We want to know how many centimeters that will equal. Now, we put this like this across. So if I'm trying to figure out inches, instead of putting inches down here, I keep it up here so that they are diagonally across from each other. Putting this over 1 is known as a unit rate. So I'm going to erase this really quick to kind of give us a sidebar. That's like saying I make $7 per hour that I work. Okay, So we're going to erase this entire question, and we're going to sidebar this. So if I work 5 hours, which I'm putting up here, how much money am I making? This is a ratio. This is how we figure this. So in order to solve this, just like over here where we put them both over 1, that mystery number will be 1. We get rid of the hour measurement, and we just multiply straight across. 7 times 5 will be 35. And I will put this 1 times 1 over 1. Same thing as saying 35 over 1, which is just 35, makes $35. Now I know some of you are saying, why don't I just multiply 7 times 5 to find out? That's basically what we're doing, but we're putting it in ratio form because not every single time is our unit of measurement going to be 1, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it will make sense in time. This is why we set it up as a fraction and we multiply it as a fraction, because it's not always going to be clear cut and going to be 1. So let's go back to our original. We have 1 inch, so our unit of measurement, 1 unit measurement is 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. Now we want to find out what 17.22 centimeters, inches, equals in centimeters. Instead of a mystery number, we're just going to put it over 1. And we will multiply. And I will actually make this smaller. So let's do 17.22 over 1. Again, we get rid of the inches part. And we just multiply straight across. 1 times 1 will be 1. And now we're going to have 2.54 times 17.22. Now, if you don't want to do it in a calculator, it's very important that we review how to multiply. You want the longer of the two numbers on top, and you want the other number, the shorter, on bottom. Ignore the decimals. In this case, the decimals are lined up, but in multiplication like this, we do not need to line up the decimals. We are just going to treat this as the following. 1,722 times 254. I'm still going to leave the decimals there, but I'm just going to ignore them until I'm done. So I will start with my 4. 4 times 2 being 8. 4 times the other 2 also being 8. 4 times 7 being 28, carry the 2. And 4 times 1 will be 4, plus the 2 will be 6. I'll erase all of this. I will put a placeholder 0. And now I'm multiplying 5. 5 times 2 is 10. Carry the 2. 5 times 2 again is 10, plus 1 will be 11. Carry the 1. I said carry the 2 earlier. I meant carry the 1. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 1 is 36. I will carry the 3. And then 5 times 1 is 5, plus the 3 will be 8. And then I will get rid of all this extra work here. And I will put 2 placeholder zeros now. And last but not least, multiply by 2 again. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 again is 4. 2 times 7 is 14. Carry the 1. And 2 times 1 is 2. Plus 1 is 3. And I will add these all together. And I'm going to highlight every other row so I get this correct. 8 plus 0 is 8. 8 plus 0 again is 8. 8 plus 1 plus 4. So I know 8 plus 4 is 12, plus 1 is 13. Carry the 1. 6 plus 6 is going to be 12, plus 4 more would be 16, plus 1 is 17. Carry the 1. Again, 8 plus 4 is 12, plus 1 is 13. Carry the 1. And 1 plus 3 is 4. Now comes the most important part. How many numbers are after a decimal? And there are 4 numbers total. The 22 and the 54, that would mean 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps. So my answer is approximately 43.738 17.88 centimeters. So 17.22 inches is approximately 43.7388 centimeters. And we're going to double check our answer to make sure we did this correctly. So it would be 17.22 multiplied by 2.54. 43.7388. And let's see if we did it correctly when we look at this. Yes, we have 43.74 centimeters because they rounded. So they looked at the place value here and then looked at this number and decided it would be 43.74 approximately in centimeters. So depending on the question, it may tell you round to the nearest tenth, round to the nearest hundredth, round to the nearest thousandth. If it tells you that, in this case, it may have told us to go ahead and round to the nearest hundredth, and that's what we would do. When converting from metric to US, it's going from a smaller to a larger unit. You will always have a fraction like this. So metric over 1 US over metric. Basically a fraction, just like we talked about. So the example here is we want to find out 1 mile. So going back to our page here. One mile is 1.61 kilometers. So going back to our example here, 1 mile is 1.65 kilometers. Now we're trying to figure out how many miles is 5 kilometers. Notice that they switch places here. You're going to want the kilometers on opposite sides and the miles on opposite sides. We're trying to figure out how many miles 5 kilometers is. Therefore, we are going to put, and it could be the other way around, but if we're trying to find this, we're going to put this on the bottom. So we put 5 kilometers over 1, and we put 1 mile over 1.61 kilometers, so you know that's how much it equals. Now, we are going to multiply straight across. This will become 5 over 1.61. Division. Again, if 1 mile equals 1.6 kilometers, how many miles would 5 kilometers equal? We would just take the kilometers here and divide it by this to find out how many miles these are. When we do that, five divided by 1.61, we would get an answer of 3.105590062111, and yeah, so this one we definitely want to round, and we would just round to 3.11 because that 0 has a 5 there. So we just round it. And again, it would be about. We would do the about symbol. We would do the wavy bacon. So again, we had 1 mile equals 1.61 kilometers. We want to find out how much 5 kilometers is in miles. This would be miles, and we would do question mark. But instead of a question mark, we're going to put 1 just to find out. We multiply straight across, which gives us 5 over 1.61. The miles would be gone because we're going to find out how many, the kilometers would be gone because we're going to find out how many miles this is. And this would become 5 divided by 1.61. In this case, this is how we would do this the long way. When you divide with a decimal, the decimal, if it's on the outside, needs to be moved all the way over to the right. Now, because the decimal needed to be moved over twice, our decimal's at the end here, it'll need to be moved over twice as well, making this become 500 with our decimal being put up here. Now we're figuring out how many times will 161 go into 500. Now I can tell you, probably going to be about 3 times. We're going to guess and check. 161 times 3. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 6 is 18. Carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So it'll be 3 times 483. When we subtract, this will need to be borrowed from. That'll become a 9. That'll become a 10. That'll be 7. 1. 17. Annex is 0. This will go in 1 time. It'll be 161. When we subtract, I'll have 9 left over. Cannot go into 9, so we put a 0. Then we put in the... Oh, sorry. We bring in a 0 first. Can't go in, put a 0. Then we bring in another 0. That will go in roughly about, I want to say, 7 times according to our calculation. Oh, it's going to only be 5 times. But that 5 is enough to help us bring this up to 3.11. And again, we're going to want to say about 3.11. And again, we are trying to figure out how many miles 5 kilometers is. So 1 mile is 1.61 kilometers. How many miles would 5 kilometers be? It would be about 3.11 miles. Now, I know this is probably very confusing, and this is why we're going to go ahead and do a lot more examples today. So, we're going to look at the examples that they've done and walk you through it. Convert 17.22 inches into centimeters. Round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. And this is where it's going to be very important that we have our check. So, 17.22 inches into centimeters. We know that 1 inch equals this. And I want to say we just did this one as an example. We did this one as an example. So we're going to go ahead and kind of, we're going to skip this one. And we also did this one in our notes. So we're going to skip this one too. Let's go ahead and use this one as an example. And let's go ahead and clear our whiteboard then. So they want us to find out how many miles 6 yards is. So it's very important that we go back up to figure out everything we need to figure out. So how many yards? And sometimes it's not going to be here, but this is one that we're going to need to know on our own. How many yards are in a mile? 6 yards would equal, oh, sorry, not a mile, meters. See, and this is why it's very important that we read. So this is the part that we're going to look at right here. 1 yard is 9.1 meters. And this is going to be a unit rate. Because remember, we're trying to figure out how much 6 yards equals. So we're going to put 6 yards over 1. 1 yard equals, again, according to this, 1 yard is 0.91 meters. 0.91. I may have said something different. 0.91 meters. And remember, we're trying to figure out. So we're trying to figure out how many meters 6 yards would be. And this is how I would set this up. So again, the question asks 6 yards would equal how many meters? We know that 1 yard is approximately 0.91 meters, if I remembered that correctly. 0.19 meters. We write it like this because we're going to be multiplying what 6 yards equals for our mystery meters. Remember, the same measurements should be diagonal. So 6 yards over how many meters is what we should have started off with. This is what I would write first. Then I would write my unit rate over here, with yards being diagonal and what it equals being diagonal from what we're trying to find it equals, if that makes sense. Miles across from miles, yards across from yards. So we are just going to write this as 1. We're going to get rid of the mile symbol. And what we are going to do now is we're going to multiply straight across. So in order to find out how many miles or meters, sorry, I keep saying miles, how many meters are in 6 yards, we are going to multiply 6 by 0.91 because 1 times 1 will equal 1. So we can do this 2 ways. We can calculator this, or we can do this the long way. You want the longer of the 2 numbers on top and we're ignoring the decimal. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 9 is 63. Wait, no, 64. Yes, because it would be, no, 54. I am burnt out today because it would be 6 times 10 is 60 minus 6 is 54. So we carry the 5 over. 6 times 0 is 0, plus the 5 is 5. And we look at how many numbers were after the decimal. 2 numbers were after a decimal. Therefore, my answer is approximately 5.46 meters. 6 yards is approximately 5.46 meters. And that's why I set it up that way. We want to find out how many inches 1.6 centimeters would equal. So let me walk you through how I would set this up. So 1.6 centimeters, 0.6 centimeters, we want to find out how many inches it equals. And again, we're going to put that over 1. Now, I should know how many centimeters 1 inch equals. 1 inch should equal a certain amount of centimeters, and that's where I come up here. 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. 2.54 centimeters. And again, we keeping our inches diagonally across and our centimeters diagonally across. So we are going to cross multiply, or not cross multiply, we're going to multiply across. This would become 1.6, and this becomes 2.54. 1.6 times, or divided by 2.54. So in order to find out how many inches 1.6 centimeters is, I'm going to do 1.6 divided by 2.54. This is one where I'm not even going to bother trying to do this, because then I'd jump twice. I'd have to jump twice over here. I'd have to figure out how many times this goes in. Just calculator. Just use a calculator. So again, 1.6 divided by 2.54. And that will give me roughly, and this is where it's going to be tricky, 6.299. So I'm just going to say approximately, it wasn't 6.2, it was 0.62, 0.63 because it was 299, approximately 0.63 inches. So I'm trying to figure out how many inches 1.6 centimeters is. So that'll be roughly 0.63 inches. And we'll do the last example. We'll call this one a video for today. We want to find out how many yards 17 meters is. So I'm going to close these calculators up. And don't want that. Sorry about that. So let's go ahead and clear off our whiteboard. And again, we're going to set up our question. So our question is asking how many yards is 17 meters? So we're going to put 17 meters over 1 yard. We don't know. Again, it's the mystery number. And we're going to multiply it by whatever 1 yard actually equals in meters. And we're going to look up here, and we see that 1 yard is 0.91 meters. 0.91 meters. And we're going to multiply straight across. This will become 17 over 0.91. Same thing as saying 17 divided by 0.91. We do not want to do this math, so calculator, 17 divided by 0.91, and it will give me this long number. But again, if we're going to keep rounding to the nearest hundredth, that's a 1, so it's 18.68, or about 18.68, and again, it'll be yards. 17 meters is roughly 18.68 yards. Now, as always, I know this was a lot, and I know ratios are not easy or fun, but if you guys have any questions at all, class time, comments, teams, those are the best ways to reach out. Please, please, please do, because I know this is not an easy lesson. But if you have any questions, please do not feel afraid to ask. I'm Mr. P, and as always, I will catch you guys on the next one.